Hello and welcome to another twisted tale, folks. One that will make you question our collective sense of humanity, leave most of you puzzled, and give you a head-scratcher moment. For once again tonight, I have a real gem for you. Tonight's story comes once again courtesy of the land of the rising sun and its rather infamous Ni-chan, otherwise known as 2chan, anonymous message board. Which means that once again what I'm about to tell you has at least 50% chance to be a little more than a bunch of lies stringed together to make up a story, but it also may be true. And so, without further ado, here it goes. Hello, my fellow Ni-chaners. As a fellow basement dweller, I wish to share this incident with you that happened to me just a few weeks prior. It really messed me up, primarily because I ended up interacting with a murderer. Well, my mom did, and it was scary. My name is Sato. I am 25 years old, and I am a functioning hikikomori. I work 4 days a week at my local kombini during the night shift. The rest of the time I spent mostly watching anime, posting bait threads about politics and social teams on Twitter, inciting flame wars between Western audiences while laughing from their rage and playing video games. I myself personally have caused and stirred quite a number of Twitter dramas that spiraled into a complete scandal, which then got covered by famous American YouTubers and Twitch streamers who were none the wiser. It's really not that hard. You just have to spout complete nonsense on Twitter about several particular topics and use some keywords to trigger some special snowflakes on Twitter. Then they repost it and the whole thing basically grows by itself. Anyway, that's not the point of today's story. Also, don't judge me. I live with my mom. I am from Gifu Prefecture. It's a lush green and beautiful mountainous area. Sometimes, when I feel particularly outgoing, I go out for a hike in the mountains with my mother. We both think it's a meditative experience. We don't really associate much with our neighbors, and as this recent event shows, there is a good reason for that. I was gaming during one particularly rainy and windy autumn night. The wind was crazy, and the sound of the raindrops pebbled from my window glass. And yet, despite all the insanity that was happening outside, I was warm and comfortable. It felt good. Even through my headphones, I don't listen on high volume. I heard the doorbell ringing. Who could that be? I wondered. It's almost 3 a.m. right now. After a brief exchange with words which I heard but did not quite understand, the doors were closed and locked back up again. "Mom? Who was that?" I asked, coming out of my room, seeing my dear mother in the corridor after she just locked the door. Mother looked pale, and her face bore the expression of either shock or disbelief. Maybe both. "You know Masaru-san?" she asked. Who?" I asked, scratching my head. Our neighbor from across the street, old man in his 70s. He just came knocking at our door, my mother said, and her eyes still blankly staring in front of me. My mother said, her eyes still blankly staring in front of me. She then suddenly decided to recheck if the door is still locked. Ah, that one. Yeah, I saw him out and about a few times when I went to work on my night shifts. Their apartment is sometimes noisy during the late hours. But we don't live next to them, so what could he possibly be wanting from us? I asked. He came to our door, rang the bell, and when I opened it, he said... Mother paused for a moment, as if searching for the right words. He said that he had killed his wife. Yumi-san is dead. Now it was my time to be in shock and disbelief. Huh? There's what now? I remember both of us stood puzzled and confused in the corridor for a while, before my mother offered for us both to retire to the kitchen, where we made some hot sake and drank it along with some light snacks while discussing the matter further. Apparently, we had a murder case next door, and my mom could very well have been the first witness of his confession. Here's what happened. I beat her until she died, the wench. I then kept on smacking her afterwards until I got tired. Yes, those were the words of my neighbor, Masaru-san, a 70-year-old man, violent and drunkard degenerate who was living next door. Apparently, that night both him and his wife were drinking. Typical. Alcohol is the preferred method of passing free time amongst adults nowadays. Alcohol and copious amount of smoking cigarettes, and then going up to other people's faces and cursing at them and trying to insinuate fistfights, and then stare at you with pig eyes while beating their chest in front of the police, professing their innocence and that they did nothing wrong. I hate them. I hate them so much. And then they say that I am a degenerate for binging anime and Steam titles. Anyway, this old man and his wife were drinking that night, and at some point an argument ensued between the two. Obviously. Probably one of them remembered how the other one had borrowed 500 yen 3 years before and still haven't returned it. As it often happens, seeking retribution for such petty nonsense, the two 70-something-year-olds started waving hands at each other. And don't for a second think that just because people are in pension age, they can't be violent. This incident is far from the only one. Only this time, his wife attacked the old man with a fireplace poker first. Basically, a long thin metal stick with a small hook at the end. While inebriated, the old hag must have felt pretty strongly about whatever petty nonsense she was raging about, since she managed to land a few good blows on the old man before he punched her in the face a few times, wrestled her, and took away the fire poker from the old hag's hands. Thus, a small scuffle ensued. Once the metal fire poker was in the husband's, Masaru-san's hands, it was his turn to bless his wife with a few good whacks of the metal stick. As the old adage goes, depending on how hard your husband or wife beats you, that means he or she loves you just as much. Well, Mr. Masaru-san must have loved his wife to death, because despite being a citizen in the country of the rising sun, his wife experienced the sunset that day, one from which she never rose back again. Just like Masaru later told the cops, after taking away the fire poker from his wife, he smacked and smacked and smacked his wife again and again and again. There were some shoutings apparently heard outside their house. "Nga, nga, help, my dearest neighbors. Nga, call the Prime Minister, my husband. Tell him, nga, he beats me. Nga, nga, nga." Masaru-san later admitted to the cops that he must have smacked his wife around 10 times with the fire poker after she collapsed on the floor. 10 times, huh? Try 70, because that's how many hit marks the coroner had found on his wife's corpse. There were probably more. After Masaru-san got tired beating his wife's dead body, he stopped for a moment, panting and trying to catch his breath. Wench, fucking whore, got what you deserved. Finally, you've eaten my entire life. God damn it, 40 years of my life wasted only doing what you want. Dead? Yeah, good. Should have smacked you even harder. God, I hate her. Should have smacked her harder. Yeah, in the end, got what you deserved. You took away almost my entire salary, made me waste half of my life by looking after your crippled parents, and what do I get in return, huh? Being cursed and despised by you, and constantly being hit with household objects. Well, f*** off, wench. What goes around comes around. Yeah. Opens the can of beer. Should have hit harder. Should have punched her longer. Dead. Finally. God, it felt good. As he opened the can of cold one and drank it with large gulps, Masaru-san finally felt the elation which he was deprived of for decades. After a couple of hours, sometime around 3 a.m. in the dead of night, for some reason he shambled off to our doorstep to report his shenanigans to my mom. We weren't his friends, mind you. Far from it. We weren't even his close neighbors. We lived across the street. We just knew that this person existed nearby. That's all. Why did he pick our house? I don't know. After this drunk old man, with clearly visible stains of blood on his shirt, told my mom about killing his wife, my mom, having smelled alcohol on him, told him to crawl back into that hellhole he calls home and to sober up. My mom also ordered him not to show his disgusting face at her door ever again, if he knows what's good for him. Not waiting nor caring about whatever this old drunkard degenerate has to say, my mom then pushed him away, so the old man fell down on his arse on concrete pavement as she shut and closed the door behind him. I love my mom. She's truly the best. Apparently the old man then shambled off back into his den, where he slept off his drunkenness for a few hours and then called the police. Around 9 hours after the fact. After the police came, he promptly surrendered peacefully with his hands raised. To make the story even more messed up, it wasn't first violent domestic dispute in their house neither. Masaru-san, now a 70-year-old murderer, was previously convicted 2 times of violent outbursts against his wife, during one of which he smacked her with an axe, luckily only at her right shoulder. Obviously, his wife later defended him, and despite the decision of the authorities, the two got back to living and drinking and fighting together again. Until this happened. According to the old man, his wife used to beat him too, so he felt justified in his actions. During his trial for the gruesome murder of his wife, Masaru-san tried to plead the court to investigate his health in order to support his claims of being not in the right state of mind, because he wasn't simply drunk. He was strongly affected emotionally and thus wasn't responsible for his actions. He was stupid drunk. Masaru-san claimed that a few years ago he had a head trauma. Combine this with his alcohol addiction, the old age, and living in a toxic relationship with his wife, and somehow in his head the old man concocted the idea that his actions of beating his wife 70+ times with a metal fireplace poker stick was a justifiable action on his behalf. Well, let's just say that the Japanese court didn't see it that way. They investigated his health and his mental state, and the conclusion they came to was obvious. No, he wasn't mentally ill in a way that he had some sort of a disease, and his earlier head trauma had nothing to do with it. He simply was a classic textbook example of an all too common type of a person in a modern society throughout the world. A Class A shameless old drunk who did the crime and now wanted to pass off his degeneracy as a literal get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, let's just say that the court didn't buy it, and thus, in light of recent events, the appropriate action was taken. They put him behind bars for 20 years in prison, considering the fact that he was 70 years old at the time of the incident. This may well have been a death sentence. And if you want my opinion, good. In fact, he got off lightly. I hate drunkards, all of them. All too often they come to my combini during the graveyard shift and show off their repulsiveness in front of my counter while I'm trying to serve them. Well, now there will be one less of them to get on my nerves. Justice was served, and the streets will be safer for it. Win-win, if you ask me. My dad was a drunkard too, reprehensible in every conceivable way. My mom had divorced him when I was around 7 years old. We haven't seen him since. He was a horrible human being, and I feel less than zero sympathy for him. Anyway, this story just goes to show you what alcohol does to people, and that people can be dangerous to society even at an old age. And this is why I don't go out much nowadays, except to and back from work. To go out for walks in nearby mountain trails with my dear mother, and to buy groceries. Yeah, that's about all I wanted to post on Ni-chan today. Take care, guys. There are some really messed up people out there. Oof. Talk about strong emotions in this one, especially towards the end, huh? This fellow China seems to feel very strongly about alcoholics. I can't say I blame him. I do find them reprehensible to the nth degree too, especially since every day I see them on grocery stores where I live. They go to buy some bread, and obviously they must buy at least 2 cans of beer to go along with it, and then wash it down with a bottle of whiskey or something, because they are slaves to the bottle, as if needing pacifier in their mouths, quite literally in fact, because often after getting a couple of cans of alcohol to go along with the loaf of bread that their wife asked them to buy it, they also ask the cashier, "Oh, and also please add the camel package, blue, light version. I'm trying to quit smoking, you see." Yeah, truly a disgusting bunch of characters. Anyway, that's the end of tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, favorite, comment, and subscribe if you did. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Bleh.